The broadcast from Admiral Leigh Drake crackled through the void, echoing across the galaxy like the sound of a gavel striking a death sentence. You wanted to see our fury. We're coming. On Earth, the shattered remnants of United Terran Command gathered in the underground bunkers of the Pacific Rim. The surface was a war zone, with the planet's once glorious cities now ravaged by Valkyrie orbital bombardments. A fractured human race stood at the precipice of annihilation. But in these shadows, there was also something more. Leigh Drake wasn't the woman the galaxy expected to lead the charge. She wasn't a diplomat, nor was she a seasoned tactician who had won galaxy-spanning battles. She was a survivor. Her family had been lost to the Valkyrie's first strike. Earth's moon colonies were now nothing but smoldering craters, and the galaxy had done nothing to stop it. But she had seen humanity's potential in the darkest moments, how they adapted, how they never gave up. She clenched her fist as the transmission cut off, the weight of the moment settling in her gut. There was no going back now. The Terran fleet, scattered in makeshift fleets across various star systems, was coming together under Drake's banner. Despite limited resources, the fleet had been re-engineered using salvaged Valkyrie technology. Terran engineers had worked around the clock, retrofitting ships with shields capable of withstanding the Valkyrie's devastating plasma weapons. Their ships weren't sleek or pristine. They were built for survival, for getting in and out of battle zones faster than any enemy could react. On Drake's flagship, the U.S. Phoenix, a sense of grim purpose filled the air. The crew, from the seasoned veterans to the fresh recruits, all understood the stakes. There would be no mercy. No negotiations. This wasn't just a war for survival. It was a war for revenge, for justice, and for the future of their species. The first mission was a bold one. The Valkyrie homeworlds lay far beyond Terran reach, and yet the Terrans would strike at their most vulnerable assets first, supply lines. The Valkyrie Empire was built on resources harvested from planets that were rich in metals and energy. With these vital supply chains crippled, the entire war effort would grind to a halt. A plan was set in motion. Captain Tessa Corrigan, a fast-thinking, ruthless tactician, would lead the first raid. Her mission was simple: hit hard, hit fast, and disappear before the Valkyrie could retaliate. As her fleet of frigates and stealth ships powered up, Drake reviewed the battle plans once more. Victory depended on speed. The fleet jumped to hyperspace, tearing through the fabric of space itself at unimaginable speeds. The stars blurred into streaks of light as humanity's first strike against the Valkyrie began. Hours later, they emerged from the void, hovering at the edge of a Valkyrie supply station orbiting a desolate moon. The station was a behemoth, its defensive systems bristling with firepower. "We're in position, Admiral," Captain Corrigan's voice crackled through the comm. "Engaging now." The first shots rang out, silent in the vacuum, but lethal nonetheless. Terran ships fired EMP bursts and gravitational disruptors, disabling the station's primary systems before the enemy could react. Within moments, the Terran assault teams were boarding, cutting through the Valkyrie's automated defenses like hot knives through butter. The Valkyrie station erupted in chaos as Terran forces infiltrated. Ships docked, bombs planted, and sabotage set in motion. Within hours, the first Valkyrie supply hub was gone, leaving nothing but a graveyard of debris and a shattered enemy. As the Terran forces faded back into the blackness of space, leaving nothing behind but destruction, the Valkyrie High Command knew this was only the beginning. Humanity had struck the first blow, and they were not retreating. The devastation of the Valkyrie supply hub sent shockwaves through the galaxy. In the dark silence of space, the debris was all that remained, a grim testament to humanity's fury. The mission had been executed with brutal efficiency, but it was only the first of many. For Admiral Leigh Drake, the victory was not enough. Not nearly enough. Drake stood on the U.S. Phoenix's bridge, staring at the tactical displays. The Valkyrie were smart, fast to adapt. But the humans had a different kind of ingenuity. They didn't play by the same rules. Tactics, tech, and speed were their advantage, and they intended to wield them with ruthless precision. "We've crippled their logistics," Drake said, her voice low but resolute. "But that's just a taste. Now we move on their fleets. If we don't strike now, we'll lose the initiative." Her chief strategist, Lieutenant Commander Raildorn, nodded. He was a former civilian hacker before the war had thrust him into uniform. His skills were invaluable, especially when it came to disrupting enemy communications and turning the Valkyrie's technological superiority against them. "Commander Corrigan's fleet is on the move," Dorn reported, eyes flicking over the data. "They're targeting Valkyrie communications hubs in the Zelma system. If they succeed, we'll have the element of surprise when we hit their fleet." Drake's lips curled into a grim smile. "Good. Let's take that surprise and burn them with it." Meanwhile, on the distant fringes of the Zelma system, Captain Tessa Corrigan stood on the bridge of the lead vessel in her fleet, the U.S. Revenant. She was a woman of action, fearless in the face of impossible odds. The orders were clear: strike swiftly, hit where it hurts, and vanish before the Valkyrie could retaliate. The Terran fleet had to be like a ghost, a specter in the darkness of space. The comms officer's voice broke her concentration. "Captain, we're in position. Zelma Station is 3 clicks ahead. Lock on to their power grid. We disable, not destroy." Corrigan barked. "And remember, no mercy." With a single command, the fleet powered forward, slipping into the dark void of the system like shadows hunting their prey. The Zelma Station, a key Valkyrie communications nexus, floated ahead like a fortress. Its defensive perimeter was formidable, but Corrigan's fleet was quicker and more agile. The Revenant and her sister ships fired EMP pulses, blanketing the station's defenses, rendering them useless. The station's alarms blared, but it was too late. Terran boarding parties, equipped with cloaking devices and silent weapons, dropped onto the station's surface, slicing through the Valkyrie's automated defense systems as if they were butter. Within minutes, the command center was theirs. The Terrans didn't need to destroy the station. They needed to take its heart and squeeze. "We've got their primary relay," Corrigan's voice crackled through the comms. "Valkyrie fleet communications are blind. We've got 5 minutes until they realize we hit them." The clock was ticking. The Terrans had trained for this moment. Precision strikes at the heart of Valkyrie control. Back on the U.S. Phoenix, Drake's fingers flew over the tactical console. "Now, initiate the next phase." The entire Terran fleet, including the newly upgraded stealth ships, dropped out of hyperspace in the heart of Valkyrie space. Valkyrie warships, once thought invincible, were scattered across the system, unaware of the incoming assault. As the fleet emerged from the void, their quantum drives powered down, revealing their positions to the enemy. But it didn't matter. The element of surprise had already tipped the scales in the Terrans' favor. Drake's plan was simple. The Valkyrie relied on centralized command and fleet formations. Terran tactics, however, broke their forces into smaller, faster units. Each ship in the fleet was a distraction, a moving piece of a larger puzzle designed to dismantle the Valkyrie's overwhelming might. "We're in position." Drake's voice rang out across the command deck. "Let's see how they handle the storm." The first wave of Terran ships descended on the Valkyrie forces like a hammer falling upon glass. The speed of the attack overwhelmed them. The Valkyrie fleet scattered, unable to maintain cohesion as Terran ships, designed for rapid tactical strikes, swarmed in all directions. It was a bloodbath. Plasma fire cut through the sky as the Valkyrie flagship fell first, its defensive systems no match for the raw power of the Terran assault. Drake's flagship, the U.S. Phoenix, locked on to enemy targets, each shot tearing through Valkyrie vessels like a hot knife through paper. Cliffhanger. Amid the chaos, the mysterious experimental ship, the one that had slipped out of phase in the previous battle, reappears far beyond enemy lines in the heart of Valkyrie space. Its crew is missing. The ship, now fully operational, is a weapon of unimaginable power. As it begins to signal Terran forces, no one knows what it might bring. Is this humanity's ticket to victory, or their greatest danger yet? The chaos of battle raged in the void of space as the Terran fleet unleashed its fury on the Valkyrie warships. Explosions rippled through the darkness, the shockwaves rippling outward in silent terror. The first wave of the Valkyrie Empire's once feared armada had been shattered in mere minutes. Terran ships, agile and relentless, picked off the Valkyrie's flagship with surgical precision, leaving the once mighty fleet reeling. Admiral Leigh Drake watched from the bridge of the U.S. Phoenix, her face illuminated by the flashing red lights of the battle. Her jaw was set, her eyes cold as she directed the next phase of the operation. "Don't give them a chance to recover," she ordered, her voice steady, but every word carrying the weight of what was at stake. The Valkyrie, stunned by the ferocity of the attack, were quickly scrambling to regroup. But the Terran fleet wasn't done yet. Their next target was even more ambitious, a super weapon that the Valkyrie had been developing on their homeworld, a weapon capable of tearing entire star systems apart. Hidden beneath layers of military secrecy, the Valkyrie Black Hole Project had been constructed deep within the heart of the Valkyrie capital. The weapon, known only to a few high-ranking officials, was designed to bend the very fabric of space itself, creating a localized singularity that could erase entire planets from existence. As Drake's fleet pushed deeper into enemy territory, the stakes grew exponentially. Destroying the Black Hole Project would cripple the Valkyrie's war effort, but it wouldn't be easy. The station was guarded by an impenetrable gravitational field designed to keep enemy forces at bay. The Terrans would have to strike fast, before the Valkyrie could activate the weapon. "We've located the station," said Lieutenant Commander Raildorn, his voice cutting through the tension in the air. "It's surrounded by multiple layers of orbital defenses. We'll need to disable their shields first if we're to breach their defenses." Drake nodded, her mind calculating the risks. Deploy the Black Star. It's the only ship capable of penetrating those shields. The Black Star was a classified Terran vessel, equipped with a quantum pulse cannon capable of bypassing even the most advanced Valkyrie shields. It was their last, best hope. Meanwhile, on the surface of the Valkyrie capital, Captain Tessa Corrigan and her elite strike team were preparing for their own mission. They had one objective: infiltrate the Black Hole Project facility, plant explosives, and get out alive. But the Valkyrie weren't about to let them walk in unchallenged. "We've got company," Corrigan said, looking out over the battlefield as enemy forces began to mass in front of their position. "Prepare for a fight." Corrigan's team, hardened by countless battles, moved with military precision. They cut through Valkyrie lines like ghosts, each move calculated, efficient. But even their skills couldn't avoid the sheer numbers of Valkyrie forces closing in. A wall of enemy soldiers, equipped with energy shields and plasma rifles, stood between them and their target. "Captain," one of her squad members called, his voice crackling with urgency. "We've got less than 5 minutes before the Valkyrie realize what we're doing." "Then we make every second count," Corrigan replied, her eyes narrowing with determination. Back in space, Admiral Drake led the assault on the Valkyrie's orbital station. As the Black Star fired its quantum pulse cannon, the shields fell. The Terran fleet surged forward, pouring firepower into the station's defenses. Explosions erupted in all directions as the station's defensive systems crumbled. Drake's heart pounded as the countdown began. 50 seconds until the black hole weapon would be activated. She couldn't afford to wait. "Send the strike teams in," Drake ordered. "We hit them now, before they can launch the weapon." The Terran ships closed in, docking with the station, and the strike teams leaped into action, moving swiftly through the corridors toward the heart of the facility. Each second felt like an eternity. Corrigan's team reached the central chamber, planting explosives around the core of the weapon. The moment of truth was upon them. But as they prepared to leave, the impossible happened. The Valkyrie had already begun to activate the black hole weapon. The station trembled as the gravitational field began to shift, pulling everything within its reach. The massive black hole core hummed to life, and the terror of total annihilation loomed. Corrigan's heart skipped a beat. "Move, now," she shouted. Back in space, Drake's ships fired one final barrage at the station's power core. The explosion that followed was cataclysmic, sending shockwaves throughout the entire system. The station disintegrated in a violent flash of light, but not before the black hole's event horizon expanded, sucking in everything around it. Cliffhanger. The explosion was devastating, but not enough to stop the weapon. As the station collapsed, the black hole grew, threatening to consume everything: planets, ships, and entire star systems. Terran forces are now caught in the gravitational pull, their ships scrambling for escape as the very fabric of space begins to tear. Drake's final message to the fleet is simple. This is it. We have one chance to survive. All ships, warp out now. But the warp drives are failing. The final remnants of the Terran fleet are on the verge of being swallowed by the void, with no way out. The black hole pulsed in the center of the shattered Valkyrie station, growing ever larger, devouring everything in its path. The Terran fleet was in peril, caught in the gravitational pull of a force beyond anything they had encountered before. Drake's heart raced as the scene unfolded before her eyes. Every ship in the fleet, from the U.S. Phoenix to the smallest frigates, fought to break free from the invisible grasp of the event horizon. Activate emergency warp drives. Drake barked, her voice cutting through the chaos on the bridge. Now, all ships, do not hesitate. The massive U.S. Phoenix lurched as its engines roared to life, the ship's hull groaning under the stress of the strained warp core. The moment the warp field engaged, the ship was supposed to tear through space at faster-than-light speeds, but the black hole's influence twisted everything. The warp engine sputtered as if the very fabric of space itself was resisting the Terran's desperate escape. Lieutenant Dorn was at the helm, sweat running down his forehead as he frantically punched in commands. "Admiral, the warp core is failing. The black hole's gravity is too strong. If we don't escape this bull, we'll be torn apart." Drake's fists clenched at her sides. The loss of the black hole project had been a victory, but now, as the black hole consumed the station, the Valkyrie's last, greatest weapon was turning into their most potent counterattack. "We can't lose any more ships," she muttered, more to herself than anyone else. "All vessels, form a line. Follow the Phoenix, and try to use the gravity waves to slingshot us out of here. The black hole might distort space-time enough for us to escape. It's our only shot." But the Terran fleet's movements were sluggish. Dorn's warning came too late for many of the smaller vessels. Two frigates in the rear of the formation were pulled into the Singularity's maw, their screams of desperation lost in the vacuum of space. A terrifying silence followed. And then nothing. "We're down to 30% of the fleet," Dorn reported grimly, his voice strained as he struggled to keep the ship aligned with the warp pathway. "The rest are either stuck in the pull or gone." Drake's mind raced. The Valkyrie Empire had suffered a heavy blow, but this battle could cripple humanity's momentum as well. Her ships were too few now, and the odds of escaping the black hole's reach seemed impossible. In a desperate act, Drake issued a command that even she hadn't fully processed at first. "Activate the experimental ship, the one that vanished after the first raid." There was a stunned silence on the bridge as every officer turned to look at Drake, their expressions filled with uncertainty. That ship, an unknown element, had been out of contact since its mysterious disappearance. No one knew exactly where it had gone or how it was functioning. "It's a gamble, Admiral," Dorn said, his voice heavy. "If the ship reappears, we may get a chance to escape. But it's also possible it's beyond repair. Or worse, it could make things worse." Drake nodded sharply. "Prepare it. Now." The experimental ship, codename Eclipse had been built with cutting-edge technology that no one fully understood. It was cloaked in mystery, an advanced prototype designed to push the boundaries of space travel. Its quantum engines were capable of tapping into spatial anomalies, bending time and space itself. Suddenly, a blinding flash of light filled the bridge of the U.S. Phoenix as the Eclipse reappeared. It emerged from the fabric of space like a phantom, unharmed, its sleek design almost ghostly against the backdrop of chaos. The ship was different now. Its exterior shimmered with an ethereal glow, as if it were not entirely within their dimension. "Eclipse is stable," Dorn reported in awe. "It's pulling us into its gravitational wake. We can use it to escape the black hole's pull." But as the Eclipse moved forward, something shifted. The ship glowed brighter, its energy surging with newfound intensity. Then, without warning, a beam of pure energy shot from the Eclipse's core, cutting through the black hole's singularity. The black hole trembled as if reacting to the ship's energy. For a moment, the very universe seemed to hold its breath. "What's happening?" Drake demanded, gripping the edge of her command chair. "Why is the ship emitting so much power?" "It's breaking down space-time," Dorn whispered, staring at the display in shock. "The Eclipse, it's not just escaping the black hole. It's manipulating the black hole, like it's trying to close it." A tremor shook the entire fleet as the black hole began to shrink, its mass and gravitational pull slowly diminishing under the influence of the Eclipse's power. But then, something unexpected occurred. The Eclipse began to flicker, as if the strain on its systems was reaching a critical threshold. Time itself seemed to warp and twist around it. The ship's energy signature was growing more erratic, as though it were pushing beyond its limits. Cliffhanger. The Eclipse falters, its hull cracking and flickering between dimensions. With the black hole now collapsing, it's unclear if the ship can survive the stress of warping spacetime. As it trembles in space, Drake makes a decision that could determine the fate of humanity's last hope. "Get us out of here," Drake orders, but the fate of the fleet may already be sealed. Will the Eclipse save them, or will the collapse of spacetime take them all into oblivion? The flickering Eclipse loomed in the heart of the chaos, its silhouette shimmering in and out of existence like a ghost at the edge of reality. The Terran fleet was on the precipice of survival, caught between the collapsing black hole and the malfunctioning ship that was their only hope. Admiral Drake stared at the shimmering energy pulse emanating from the Eclipse's core. The air on the bridge was thick with tension, and the silence was deafening. The once mighty Valkyrie fleet, reduced to rubble, was now nothing more than an afterthought as the fight for survival raged in the void. But at this moment, it was the Eclipse, humanity's last shot, that would decide their fate. "The Eclipse is failing, Admiral," Lieutenant Commander Rael Dorn said, his voice strained as he watched the damage reports flood in. "The stress on its quantum core is off the charts. If we don't pull away from it now, it's going to tear itself apart." Drake clenched her jaw, her mind racing. The Eclipse had been humanity's greatest gamble, a technological marvel that defied everything they knew about space and time. It was capable of manipulating gravity, bending time itself, but it had never been tested in a real combat scenario. The black hole continued to shrink, its massive gravity field weakening with every pulse of energy from the Eclipse. But it wasn't a perfect solution. The Eclipse's core was overheating, its quantum stabilizers crackling as it tried to push beyond its limits. "Status of the fleet," Drake demanded. "We've lost more ships to the gravitational collapse," Dorn replied. "Only the Phoenix, the Revenant, and a handful of frigates remain intact. The others are gone." The reality of the situation hit Drake hard. The Terran fleet, their greatest weapon against the Valkyrie, was now a shadow of its former self. The Valkyrie had taken a heavy toll, yes, but so had humanity. There was no more room for error. "We have to make a choice, Admiral," Dorn added, his voice quieter now. "We're going to lose the Eclipse if we don't pull back. It's too unstable. The black hole is collapsing, but the strain on the ship is. I know, Drake interrupted, her voice barely above a whisper. But if we pull back now, we may lose the entire fleet. The Valkyrie are rebuilding faster than we ever expected. If we retreat, if we fail to survive this, they'll come for Earth again, and we won't have anything left. The weight of the decision pressed on her chest. The eclipse's energy was the only thing keeping the black hole from devouring everything. But its power was finite, and the ship wasn't built to endure this kind of stress. Suddenly, a warning klaxon blared across the bridge, snapping Drake out of her thoughts. The quantum core is going critical, Dorn shouted, panic rising in his voice. If we don't detach, it's going to drag us down with it. No, Drake's voice was sharp, her resolve hardening. We don't pull away, we push forward. She turned to her tactical officer, set a course for the eclipse. We're going in. There was no time for hesitation. The Phoenix and the remaining Terran ships adjusted their trajectories, heading straight for the eclipse. As they drew closer, the very fabric of space seemed to ripple, twisting in unnatural patterns as the black hole continued to shrink. Drake knew the risk. If the eclipse's core failed completely, it would trigger a cataclysmic event, a gravitational implosion that could tear apart the entire system and everything within it. But she didn't have a choice. We're almost there, the tactical officer called out, his voice barely audible over the sound of the straining engines. The fleet reached the eclipse, the ships surrounding it as a protective shield. Drake gripped the armrests of her chair. The tension in the air was palpable. The future of humanity hung by a thread. Braced for impact, Admiral, Dorn called, his eyes wide with fear. The eclipse, it's destabilizing faster than predicted. Just as the Terran ships formed their final shield around the eclipse, the inevitable happened. A massive pulse of energy erupted from the eclipse's core, flashing white-hot across the void. The gravitational forces were unbearable, pulling at the Terran ships at the very fabric of reality itself. Drake's mind raced. This was it, the breaking point. If the ships didn't hold fast, the entire fleet would be torn apart. The Phoenix shook violently as the shockwave hit. Consoles flickered, alarms blared, and the bridge crew fought to maintain control. And then, in an instant, everything shifted. A deafening, gut-wrenching pull of gravity tugged at their very souls. Space and time seemed to bend and warp, the boundary between them blurring as if the entire universe was ripping apart. The fleet held firm, their engines pushing against the tidal forces, riding the wave of the eclipse's energy, determined not to be swept into the abyss. Cliffhanger. Just as the fleet begins to break free from the black hole's reach, time itself distorts. The eclipse flickers once more, its energy signatures flashing erratically. Drake's final order is to keep pushing forward, but as the space around them shifts, an ominous truth emerges. They might have escaped the black hole, but where have they ended up? The fabric of space itself is now unrecognizable, and a deep, unsettling silence surrounds them. Have the Terrans escaped, or have they just entered a far darker, unknown reality? The eclipse's final surge of energy tore through the fabric of space, warping reality around the Terran fleet. For a moment, everything went silent. The explosions, the alarms, the screaming engines, everything ceased to exist. Time itself felt like it was suspended, holding its breath, waiting to see if the Terrans would survive. Admiral Lade Drake blinked, trying to clear her vision, but the stars in front of her were wrong. The space around them, once filled with the cold void of the galaxy, now pulsed with an eerie, unnatural glow. The familiar constellations, the Milky Way, the Orion Nebula, the systems they knew, were gone. What just happened? Drake muttered under her breath, gripping the armrest of her chair. The bridge of the U.S. Phoenix was a scene of chaos. Consoles flickered, and the crew was dazed, struggling to make sense of the impossible. Lieutenant Commander Rael Dorn, his face pale and drained from the strain, rushed to the tactical console, fingers flying over the controls. "Admiral, we're no longer in the Milky Way," he said, his voice a mixture of awe and disbelief. "Our coordinates don't match anything in our database. The stars, they're not where they should be." Drake's mind raced. "Not in the Milky Way," she repeated, struggling to comprehend the scope of what Dorn was saying. "Then where are we?" "We're in a place," Dorn said slowly, "where the laws of space and time no longer seem to apply the way we understand them." A chill ran through Drake's spine. The eclipse's energy had done more than just pull them from the black hole's grip. It had opened a rift, a tear in space itself, and now the fleet found themselves somewhere else, a place no human had ever known. "Scan for life forms, anything," Drake ordered, her voice sharp. "This might be a new galaxy, a different dimension. We need to know if we're alone." The crew scrambled, sending out signals across the unknown expanse. But the results were unsettling. "We're not alone, Admiral," the sensor officer called out, voice tense. "There's something out there. A massive energy signature. It's far away, but it's heading in our direction. And..." The officer paused, his hand shaking as he adjusted the sensor readings. It's not a star. I don't know what it is." The tension on the bridge was suffocating. Every crew member knew the implications of what the officer had said. The Terran fleet had just crossed into a new unknown territory, and now they were being observed, perhaps hunted, by an unknown force. "Set a course toward the energy signature," Drake ordered, her voice steady despite the rising dread. "We need to understand what it is and whether it poses a threat." The U.S. Phoenix slowly powered forward, its engines humming softly in the eerie silence. The rest of the fleet followed in formation, their ships stretching across the void like tiny, vulnerable specks. As they moved closer, Drake's mind raced. Were they still in the same universe? Was this another dimension? And who, or what, was this entity they were heading toward? The sensors began to pick up more details as they got closer to the source. The energy signature was growing in intensity, like a black hole of energy, but unlike any known phenomenon. It was pulsating, radiating a strange, almost biological frequency. And the closer they got, the more Drake felt the pull in her chest, as though the energy was alive, calling to them. Suddenly, the view screen flashed a warning. A massive, shadowy silhouette appeared on the edge of the fleet's sensors. It was enormous, its shape difficult to define. Part ship, part creature, its surface shifting and undulating like a living entity. The crew on the bridge stared in stunned silence as the alien construct grew larger, its shadow stretching across the stars. "What in God's name is that?" Dorn whispered, his eyes wide with disbelief. It didn't take long for the answer to become apparent. A pulse of energy shot out from the alien entity, so powerful it blinded their sensors, and then a voice. Not in any language they knew, but in every language. It was a voice that resonated in their minds, an ancient intelligence communicating directly with them, bypassing the need for translation. "You are not of our kind." The words reverberated like a deep hum, filling the minds of every crew member on the bridge. "You have crossed into the realm of the forgotten. Why have you come here?" Cliffhanger. The voice lingered, probing, examining. The energy from the alien entity surged again, and the ship shook as though an invisible hand had gripped it. Was this a hostile force, or had the Terran fleet wandered into a place far beyond their understanding, where even the laws of reality itself no longer applied? The silence that followed was deafening. They had crossed a line, but whether it was the line of survival or destruction was yet to be seen. The voice, ancient, powerful, and impossible, lingered in the minds of the Terran crew. The alien entity, an unfathomable presence in the vastness of space, loomed just beyond their reach, its form an eerie amalgamation of organic and mechanical elements. The energy radiating from it felt like a pulse in the very air of the ship, vibrating with unknown frequencies. Admiral Lee Drake stood frozen, her mind racing, trying to make sense of the overwhelming situation. The Forgotten Realm. What was that? A place? A concept? Or a prison of some kind? Was this the realm where all the lost civilizations had vanished, or was it something far more sinister? She took a deep breath, steeling herself for the next few moments. They had no choice but to answer. "We are the Terran fleet," Drake began, her voice steady despite the weight pressing on her chest. We were caught in a gravitational anomaly and have ended up in this place. We mean no harm. We only wish to understand where we are and how we may return home." The alien presence seemed to pause, as if considering her words. The energy signature fluctuated, and for a moment, Drake feared the entity might attack. But then the voice returned, softer, almost curious. "The Terran fleet," it repeated, almost tasting the words. "You are of a new breed, a race born from the chaos of the stars. You have stumbled upon the threshold, the barrier between the living and the forgotten." Drake's heart skipped a beat. The threshold, a barrier between two worlds. "What is this place?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Where are we?" There was no immediate answer. Instead, the alien entity's energy pulse grew more intense, swirling with an ethereal hum. The ship's hull shuddered again, and the crew felt as though they were being drawn closer, as if the very fabric of space itself was pulling them toward the unknown. "This is the realm beyond the stars," the voice finally answered, "a place where forgotten races and lost civilizations have been cast. Here, the dead of the cosmos dwell, forgotten by time and space. It is a place of transition, a limbo for those who have failed to escape the grasp of the void. You are no longer within the confines of your universe, Terran. You have entered the domain of the lost." "The lost," Dorn repeated, his voice filled with disbelief. Are you saying that we're dead? That we don't belong here?" "You are alive," the voice responded. "But in this place, the living and the dead are one. Your existence here is fragile. It is not meant to last." A sharp gasp filled the bridge. Drake's stomach twisted. The Eclipse, the ship that had saved them from the black hole's pull, was now their tether to this strange, nightmarish realm. If they were trapped here, how would they ever escape? "Then how do we leave?" Drake asked, her voice commanding. "We cannot remain here. We came from another place, and we need to return home." The silence stretched long. The alien entity's presence pulsed with a new energy, a feeling of foreboding. "There is a price for everything, Terran." The voice was now low, almost sorrowful. "The threshold is a test, a crossing. You have disrupted the natural order. And for that, there will be consequences." Dorn turned to Drake, eyes wide with alarm. "What does that mean? What price are they talking about?" Before she could answer, a low rumble echoed from deep within the heart of the alien entity. The massive form, still beyond the grasp of the Terran fleet's sensors, seemed to shift and expand, as if waking from a long slumber. "You will see the truth of your disruption soon enough," the voice warned, now tinged with a strange sorrow. "The forgotten will demand payment. They have been waiting for someone to cross into their realm, and they will not let you leave without first paying the cost of your trespass." The eerie hum intensified, and suddenly the stars themselves began to flicker out. The lights on the bridge dimmed, and the hum of the ship's systems began to falter. The ship was being pulled into something much darker, something ancient, something that had been lying in wait for millennia. Drake felt a cold, terrifying realization settling in her gut. They were no longer in control. They were at the mercy of forces beyond their comprehension. And now, they had to face the consequences of entering the Forgotten Realm. "Braced for impact, Admiral," Dorn said, his voice filled with dread. "I think we're about to meet the lost." Cliffhanger. Reality itself begins to warp around the fleet as the Forgotten make their presence known. The stars blink out, the space between the ships grows unstable, and Drake's worst fears begin to come true. They are not alone, and they are no longer in control of their own fate. The Forgotten realm trembled, its very foundation shifting as the Terran fleet remained suspended in the darkness, surrounded by the unimaginable force of the alien entity. The stars flickered and died one by one, swallowed by an impenetrable void. The entire fleet, the U.S. Phoenix, the Revenant, and the remaining frigates, felt the pull, like the fingers of a hand dragging them deeper into a place where space and time held no dominion. Admiral Leigh Drake stood at the center of the bridge, her gaze fixed on the flickering view screen. The ship's systems were failing. Lights blinked out, and console readings were becoming increasingly erratic, unstable. Every officer on the bridge could feel it. The crushing heaviness of the unknown, the chilling awareness that they were no longer in control of their fate. "Admiral," Lieutenant Commander Rael Dorn's voice trembled, his fingers flying over his console. "We're being dragged into something. I can't stabilize the ship's trajectory." The pulse from the alien entity intensified. The strange energy signature they had been tracking now overwhelmed their sensors, filling every available frequency with an alien hum, a hum that seemed to burrow deep into their minds, like a living presence, watching, waiting. "Shut it off," Drake ordered, her tone sharp and desperate. "Everything that's not vital, shut it down." But Dorn shook his head. "It's not the ship, Admiral. It's the very space around us. We can't escape. We can't even break free from the gravitational pull of this place." Drake's eyes darted to the view screen. The alien form was closer now, its shifting shape becoming more defined, part bioorganic, part machine, a titanic, sentient construct. Its surface gleamed with strange, pulsating patterns, as if the entity itself were breathing. Then the voice returned, and this time, it was not just a whisper in their minds. It reverberated through the hull of the ship, as though the very air itself was vibrating with the entity's presence. "The price has come," the voice boomed. "The living have trespassed upon the realm of the Forgotten, and now you will face the consequences of your crossing." Drake gripped the edge of her command chair, her knuckles white. "What do you want from us?" she demanded, her voice unyielding despite the rising panic in her chest. There was a long pause, as though the entity were considering her. Then the voice spoke again, but this time it was softer, almost mournful. "We are the guardians of this place, the space between worlds. You will not leave without paying what is owed." The air on the bridge grew colder, and the crew felt it. A presence, watching, judging. The stars flickered one last time, then vanished, and the dark void around them seemed to expand, as though it were closing in on them, suffocating them with its emptiness. Drake's mind raced. The price. What could they possibly offer? Their lives, their souls. But just as the panic started to settle in, a new voice, human, cut through the tension. "Admiral, I'm detecting something. Something in the fabric of the rift." It was Lieutenant Karras, their lead engineer. "There's a spatial disturbance, like a breach in the fabric of reality itself." "What are you talking about?" Drake snapped. "It's a doorway." Karras' voice was urgent, filled with the kind of intensity that only came in moments of extreme danger. "There's a tear in the rift, a way out. But it's unstable. If we try to enter it, there's no telling what might happen." Drake's heart pounded. A way out. Could it really be that simple? "Can we make it?" she asked, already knowing the answer. Karras hesitated. "If we align the ships with the energy pulses and use the eclipse's residual power, we might be able to force our way through. But we'll need to time it perfectly." The voice of the Forgotten pulsed again, more ominous this time. "Flee if you must, Terran. But remember, there is always a price. Time is a circle. The lost will follow you, and what you have disrupted will not be forgotten. ****. The crew was tense. There was no time to waste. Drake gave the order. Prepare for a full-power jump to the rift. Align the fleet with the eclipse's energy. The U.S. Phoenix lurched as the warp engines fired up, drawing on the last remnants of power from the eclipse's fading core. The ships, now in perfect formation, moved toward the rift, a swirling mass of energy and distortion that seemed to pulse like the beating heart of the universe itself. All ships, hold steady, Drake commanded, her voice resolute. The rift grew larger, its edges vibrating with dangerous energy, the very air around them charged with the possibility of untold danger. The fleet plunged forward, pushing against the gravitational forces that threatened to tear them apart. But as they entered the rift, there was a final pulse, a flash of blinding light. Cliffhanger. The ships vanish into the rift, but not without leaving something behind. In the moment before they disappear, a final image flashes across the bridge. The massive, ever-watchful eyes of the Forgotten, observing them. The cost of their passage remains unclear, but one thing is certain. They are not done with humanity. The Terrans have left their mark in the Forgotten Realm, and that mark will echo across the cosmos for ages to come.